Hey guys, welcome to another live session. I actually brought some visual aids that I will be using, but I wanted to let everyone tune in. We just started and I'm running around, so I apologize, but I wanted to make sure that I had everything we needed for today's lesson. I'm actually pretty excited about this one. This is kind of a fun one for me. I go down in the weeds on this kind of stuff. So let's get, all right. Yeah, that light's a little intense, but still not in a studio, still here in my home office. But hey, why not? It's kind of fun. All right. Well, hey, let's talk about, before we get the lesson going, I'm going to talk a little bit about what we got coming up. We're doing something a little different this week. As I mentioned the week before and the week before that, we were going to start publishing older Facebook Live sessions that we had taped. I say taped. I haven't used tape in forever. But that we've recorded. I have those on file. And so since there's a lot of really good information in them, I thought it'd be a good thing to start sharing them here on the YouTube channel. So we started making a pattern of every Wednesday that we would publish an older video for you guys to watch. They're not crazy popular. I don't expect them to knock them out of the park, guys get all excited about it. It's not a big deal. But I did want to share that content with everyone. This week's a little different. This week, I'm going out of town. I'm actually going on a really cool ride down in the Panhandle. Hopefully we don't get the storm. I know they're kind of predicting a potential hurricane. Hopefully we do all right, and that's not the case. But yeah, I'm going to be gone. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to flip things around. Like I mentioned last week, we have a really cool exclusive test ride on a 2020 Kawasaki Ultra 310R that has been outfitted with a K-Speed Stage 1 kit. And we did that down in Brisbane, Australia. That video is going live on Wednesday. That's a new video. That's going live on Wednesday. And then Friday, we're going to put out the older video. That'll just kind of slide in. So it'll give you something exciting and something fresh to look at on Wednesday. So, you know, it'll break up your hump day. But other than that, we're actually pretty excited for that. Excuse me. So we will have that video and article on Wednesday, and then Friday will be the older video. And I want to make sure it is the right one. So I'm going to let you guys know what the topic is for that Friday. Friday's video should be good. Yeah, that one is going to be some tips on getting the most out of your warranty, getting the most out of your service department at the dealership. A lot of you guys don't do your own service. And that's fine, by all means. I mean, you paid for a warranty and you paid for service, so by all means, get your money out. Money's worth out of it. So we throw out a few little tips on that one that will be good for you. It's stuff that I've said a few times before. And for you guys who do your own service, for you guys who do your own maintenance, it might not be that informative. But for a lot of you guys who are more casual, who manage to tune into these incredibly long sessions, it might be of some benefit to you. The biggest things, obviously, are in regards to modification. And we do have some articles on the Watercraft Journal regarding, can you modify your watercraft and maintain your warranty? The answer is yes, depending on what you do. So, for example, if you change your handlebars and you want to change your handlebars to something sporty, and you change your grips, and then you change the seats and the HydroTurf, your dealership can't say, well, your warranty on your powertrain is void. You haven't touched your powertrain. Equally, if you change your water box, that's not going to affect your fuel system. So there's a lot of things that are in there to protect you as a consumer, and we outline that. I can share that in the description for the video, which I'll probably do since I already have it up. But we do want to help a lot of you guys out who are maybe not so mechanically inclined, or who just simply don't have the time and the space to work on your own watercraft. Number two, I did want to mention something, and it's going to be a little crass, and you guys are probably either going to laugh or get mad at me. But one of, I hate saying it this way, but before you go onto a Facebook group, before you go into a chat group and start asking questions, like what kind of oil should I run, or what kind of procedures do you guys recommend for winterizing, or what kind of battery should I buy? Those questions can be very easily answered by especially if you're keeping your vehicle stock. All of that is answered in your owner's manual. All that stuff is answered. And the reason why I'm saying this is because more often than not, when you come into a Facebook group or you go into a forum group and you ask a very entry-level question, you're going to get a lot of people razzing you. And if you don't take well to being teased, maybe that's not the opportunity to go in there and say, hey, what kind of battery should I buy? I get a lot of questions every day, tech questions, from a lot of people of a lot of different stripes. And I have no problem answering them. If I'm answering them or any of my team answers them, we typically try to be really useful. But we do have a case of quite a few people who will ask a question and then proceed to argue with us. And you can get a second opinion. By all means, I am not the end-all, be-all of personal watercraft. I don't claim to be, all right? But I will tell you, when I give you some advice, or any of my team give you advice, they're usually asking me anyway. So it's pretty much coming from me. Guys, if you ask, you got my answer. If you want to argue with me, go to a forum or go to a Facebook group, because I got another 100 people that want questions answered, and I can't waste a lot of time on questions that really could be answered by your owner's manual. Number three, I guess, is I don't want to be mean about this. I'm trying not to be rough, but I am going to make a policy here on the YouTube channel, and it's already been in action for several months. I happily delete and ban people. All right. The United States Constitution grants you the right to free speech and the right to assembly. Thankfully, because of Section 230, YouTube does not apply to that. And as a content creator, I really want to have an environment that is positive, that is encouraging, especially to new people. So I ban trolls, and I ban people who trash. You can make fun of me, all right? I get it. I'm a redhead. Okay, I got a ruddy complexion. Okay, make fun of the fact that I'm a pink-skinned redhead. Whatever, I get it, okay? I've been dealing with this since I was a little kid, all right? My brother gave me crap for being a redhead. But I'm going to tell you right now, you start trashing some of the other people on the comment section, people who are actually actively wanting to ask questions and wanting to learn, and you're some know-it-all who thinks he's God's gift, dude, I'm going to bounce you, all right? I don't have to tolerate that. And we honestly want to have people who genuinely want to learn something, who have, quite frankly, be invited and feel invited to ask questions and to interact. So I've had to kick out I'd probably say half a dozen people, and it's just because they have to mouth off and they have to act like they're cool and they think they're God's gift, and we don't need you here. All right, you can go to the forum, you can go create a private group on Facebook, and trash talk all you want, but don't bring it here. Okay, so today's a fun topic. This is something that has been a pet subject of mine for quite some time, and that is primarily because when can we expect the 2021 VX Limited HO review? Good question. Probably. Oh, it's going to be late this month. No, let's see. Today's the 4th. Next week is going to be the Cowie, and then the VX Limited HO is next. So that should be, let's see. Today's the 4th, 7th, 21st. It's looking like it'll probably be around the 27th or 28th. So right before Halloween. Cameron, thank you for your question. Yeah, that review comes out right before Halloween. I got to get I got to get a lot of stuff out before. Hey, from the Philippines. All right, we got Canada, we got Florida, we got 2 from Florida. All right, we got a lot of guys. All right, this is great. So anyhow, all right, I don't want to get distracted too much because we got a lot to cover here. And I'm really trying to keep it within the hour and 15-minute deadline. I've always been going, I think thus far I've been an hour and a half. I'm trying to cut some time down. All right. So personal watercraft hulls, personal watercraft tracking. We're going to go over a lot of terminology today. All right. We're going to use a lot. There's going to be a lot of vocabulary words. And I have given people the hyperlink. In fact, it's the first hyperlink in here. If you guys scroll up, go to the top of the live chat feed. The second, the first hyperlink is to our store. If you like what we're doing, guys, if you like what we're doing, please support the magazine and support the channel by buying a t-shirt. It's starting to get cold out there, so maybe buy a hoodie. We have like 6 or 7 different cuts. We have a kid size. We have 2 different women's. We have 2 different men's, and then we have a hoodie. And every one of those shirts comes in a minimum of 6 or 7 colors. So the colors that you might see on the store are not the color. They're the only color you can get. There's, get Yamaha blue, or get Sea-Doo yellow, or Honda red. There's lots and lots of colors. We try to get a lot of the brands represented. But please, if you do like what we're doing, please support the magazine with a shirt or a hoodie. But second of all, we want you guys to please check out and open up another window if you can while you're on. If you're watching this on a television, I understand. But if you're on your computer, if you're on a desktop or a laptop, I want you to click the second link and open up to another tab, open up to another window. I have my other 2 screens over here. But open up the article, because we're going to go over this article. This is a very detailed article. It was published 2 years ago. All right. But everything in there remains the same, except obviously some watercraft have been updated. But this is one of those deep dive articles that is one of the best that we've done. And it took me, actually, this article took me a couple of months to write. So, all right, here we are. Let's start talking about personal watercraft hulls. Let's start talking about rough water and all these sorts of things. All right, before we get into what ski's the best and what ski's the worst or whatever, which I'm pretty much not going to give you that answer. You're going to have to figure that out on your own. I'm going to explain some very basic terminology, all right? And I've got my dry erase board here. We're going to pretend that we're in class, but we're going to go over terminology. All right. And if you guys can read my crappy handwriting, then you get bonus points. All right. So let's go over, here we go. Okay. So first, let's go over water conditions. All right. Just so that we're all on the same page. These are not gospel doctrine. This is not Webster's dictionary, but for our conversation, we're going to use, how did you like the 2021 Fish Pro? To be honest, I didn't get a chance to write it. So let's move back. Regarding the Polytech 2.0 on the GTI, I strongly suggest you rewatch our video and read the article. We are I'm really happy with the GTI SE 170. Like, they're going to have to pry it out of my hands. Okay, so let's stay on topic here. All right. For the sake of this conversation, we're going to use these definitions in regards to water conditions. And again, my penmanship is awful. All right. So in regards to using the word chop or choppy, all right, In this case, we're going to use, all right, that chop. Obviously, glass is glass, and we don't have to define glass. But in this case, we're going to talk about water that is being moved by a current or a cross current, which creates a 1 to 2 foot undulation. All right. Wind and current are going to be the primary causes of chop. All right. But here's the final one. I'm doing this backwards in a reverse mirror. Is that when you're riding, you paying attention to the water surface, you're reading the water, you can find a rhythm. It's rhythmic. I say it's rhythmic over here. All right. You're going to find a rhythm in it. So you might be going, hey, listen, at 25 miles an hour, it's beating me up. But at 35, I'm in my rhythm. And you go bang, 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 bang. So that is what we're going to use for the definition of chop in today's conversation. Number 2, rough or open ocean. Okay. I should probably have put open ocean down here with offshore. So let's take open ocean off. Squeak, squeak, squeak. All right. All right. So in this case, rough water would be caused in an offshore environment would be caused by swell. Okay. So that swell or winds is going to be breaking up that water pretty a lot more progressively than you would with just wind and a mild current. Okay. This is 3 foot plus. I would say 3 foot to 5 foot would be rough water. Okay. And in this case, if you're reading the water, you can find a pattern to it. All right. That swell, especially if you're going like 50, 60 miles an hour, you're going to be able to read that pattern. Okay. It's not as rhythmic, but you're finding a pattern. So instead of a 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, you know, a peak and a valley, a peak and a valley, a peak and a valley, that would be chop. But in rough, you might be like peak, swell, valley, peak, swell, valley, peak, swell, valley. And so you're going bam, 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 bam. A lot of offshore racers are going to start. It's like a drummer reading off tempo. Okay. So rough water, we're going to use that definition. In offshore, what I would appropriately put open ocean. All right. This is, you shouldn't be on the water. This is really, really ugly conditions. This is really like, I'm going to get hurt here. All right. I would say anywhere from 4.5 up. For most people, 4 foot is like, oh, get me off this water. I mean, we can measure these a little bit further down. This could be from 6 inches to 1.5 feet. But what's going to happen is that I'm not answering Watercraft questions right now, guys. I'm not answering these questions. I'm doing the lesson. So I'll come back to those at the end of this and see what I can do if we don't go super over. Okay. But offshore is, in the offshore open conditions, you have storm conditions. All right. You might have really, really rough, I mean, like high gust winds. You might be at 20, 30, 40 mile an hour winds. I've seen Lake Havasu turn into Pacific Ocean garbage before. So it can happen. I mean, anyone out in the Great Lakes, they can tell you right now, that stuff sinks oil tankers. All right, severe winds, and in most cases, it's severely erratic. All right, the water is just, you can't read it. You're getting your fillings knocked out of your head. It's just really, really rough. So these are what I'm going to be talking about. Chop is what we're primarily going to be focusing on, because most of you guys are not riding in rough and offshore conditions. All right. Unless you're Craig Warner and Dustin Farthing and you guys are doing the Carry Jet. This stuff, these two things don't really apply to you. Chop is what we're going to be really focusing on and touching on a little bit of rough. Okay. So then let's talk about hull behavior definitions. Okay. I'm trying to hold this up, and I've got all my stickers from different events I've attended. Okay. So first is tracking. Second is handling. And third is comfort. Okay. These definitions are just for the sake of this conversation. All right. So what is tracking? Tracking is the ability of a watercraft, regardless of its hull design, the ability of a specific watercraft to maintain a straight line in any of these conditions. Okay. How does it track in chop? How does it track in rough? How does it track offshore? All right. And that's the ability to maintain a straight line. It's not darting. It's not wandering anywhere. Wandering would be like, okay, it's just kind of going with the flow. The flow of the water is moving it around. Darting would be the forces of the waves are pulling the watercraft in erratic, unpredictable directions. So that's important to pay attention to. There's a difference, all right? So wandering versus darting. Okay, so that's tracking. Tracking is the ability to maintain a straight line in any one of these water conditions. Number 2 is handling. All right, handling is the ability of a watercraft, of any specific watercraft, its ability to execute a turn or maneuver in any one of these water conditions. Okay, so you understand, tracking is straight, handling is its ability to turn or maneuver. I say that because it's kind of legalese, but its ability to turn or maneuver in any one of these water conditions. Okay, third, we're going to talk about comfort. All right, now comfort is not necessarily what you or I would normally use as a definition, but in this case, it's the ability of a watercraft to do the ability of the watercraft to track and handle with the least amount of stress, duress, or wear on the rider. Okay, so let's say a watercraft is great at tracking and it's great at handling, but it beats you up. I mean, it's just bang, 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 bang. You're just getting your teeth knocked out. Its comfort level wouldn't be very good. Okay. But let's say it's super thick and it's full of insulation. So it's absorbing a lot of the bangs and bumps and all that kind of, that rattling that you might feel, but it sucks tracking or it sucks handling. Okay. You see what I'm talking about? There's a difference here. So these are our terms for today's lesson. All right. Our water conditions and our hull behavior. Okay. So now, here's where it gets fun. All right. I'm going to throw out a bunch of units. I don't have visual aids. I can't pull up, a model of a hull and say, look at this and look at this and I wish I could. In fact, I spent about an hour earlier today trying to figure out how to screen share. And YouTube Live doesn't let you screen share, at least without a third-party software. So unless I download that, we can come back and revisit this. And I can get like a little cursor and go, woo, look at this. Okay, so let's just move on. All right. So technically, when you talk to a boat builder, they talk about 4 hull designs. There's 4 hull shapes. I shouldn't say design, but hull shapes. Okay. So there's 4 hull shapes. Number 1, let's get our board out. All right. Let's see if I can fit in the screen here. Okay. Number 1, over here. Flat bottom. All right. A flat bottom hull, a round bottom hull, and a V shape or V bottom hull. But V shape is the most common phraseology. All right. There is a 4th. The 4th hull is a multi-hull. All right. That would be like a catamaran. Not a lot of catamaran personal watercraft, so we're just not going to talk about it. So I hope that's all right. I'm just going to leave that one off the table. So let's I'm going to get my mouse back. It's a stupid Bluetooth mouse. All right. So moving on. Here we go. So in this case, I'm going to bring these back up. Okay. A flat bottom hull are really stable. All right. Like a bass boat. All right. Is a really good platform for fishing. This would be to be honest, a barge is a flat bottom boat. All right. And these are really, really stable, primarily found in flat water. You'll see them on a river, river or a very calm lake. Okay, lots of canals. But a flat bottom hull is the roughest in choppy water. Okay, they just feel everything. So that is, I'm giving highs and lows, or pluses and minuses of every hull design. Okay, a round bottom hull. Okay, these are displacement. What they'll call a displacement hull. A displacement hull is very deep in the water. Okay, there is a lot of wetted surface. Okay, that means that if you're talking about a personal watercraft, from the bond line, there's just a lot of water. Even when it's at speed, there's just a lot of water, or a lot of boat in the water. Okay, so these move really smoothly. Okay, but they're the least stable. So like a kayak or a canoe. Sorry guys. A kayak or a canoe would be a round bottom hull. Okay. The last is a V-shaped hull. Okay. V-shaped hulls are primarily what are used for power boats, personal watercraft of that nature. Okay. These are planing hulls. That means that as the hull increases in speed, it rises out of the water. Okay. It literally pushes itself out of the water. That V wants to actually have the least amount of wetted surface, and so it wants to track on its center keel, and we're going to get into those things later. All right, and they're designed to plane on the top of the water. Okay, especially at higher speeds. That's why they're ideal for a personal watercraft or a powerboat. All right, they provide probably the smoothest water in chop. Because there's less of the watercraft in the water itself, less wetted surface. All right. But believe it or not, a V-hull has the most wetted surface, especially at lower speeds. And why is that? Okay. Let's just use my hands as an example. Okay, don't move. All right. So let's say a round bottom hull like a canoe. Okay. Well, that looks like a lot of surface area. But how much of that hull is out of the water? Oh, only about that much. But a V-shaped hull like this actually has these long surface area, very large surface areas that are deep in the water. Okay, it's not like this, except for when it's at speed. But when it's down here, it's going to have the most contact with the water. Has a lot of drag. Okay, I'm establishing all this stuff so that we can get to the meat and potatoes later. All right, this is the nuts and bolts. This is what the foundation of our conversation. Okay, so what are good examples currently of personal watercraft with each of these hull designs? So these are not perfect examples because every single personal watercraft is a modified version of a handful of these. Okay, so like, for example, all right, let's bring this guy back up. So for flat bottom, I typically put down the more playful hull designs. So like a Spark or an EXR or an EX, those have a very flat hull design. All right, there are lots of they're slippery. They slide across the surface. You can wash them out and do donuts. You can power slide them for 30 feet. They're a lot of fun. I love the EXR. Like, I love the EXR. But the EXR is not a family ski, so I would never buy one. Because if I'm going to spend the money to buy one, I'm going to have something that the whole family can enjoy. All right. But the Spark or the EXR are very playful. The previous pre-2020 GTI hull was actually very flat. And that's why the GTI hull previously, all right, not the 2020 and up. 2020 has the Polytech hull. But the previous GTI hull from like 2011, 2011 was the redesign. All right. Very, very loose, very, very playful, flat bottomed hull. When I say loose, that means that you could wash the tail out and you could slide it. All right. It doesn't have a lot of traction. It doesn't have a lot of grip. Okay. And that's primarily because it's sliding, it's skipping across the surface. All right. A round bottom hull. This is not technically correct. And I don't want anyone getting mad at me for this, but I'm going to use this as kind of These are the best examples I could give. All right. The two best round bottom hulls I could give examples are the FZ or FZR and the new RXP. All right. And the reason why is because I'm looking at the outside chine. I'm looking at the outside ledge. All right. Neither of these craft are terribly stable. Like you wouldn't want to use it as a swim platform. You're not going to want to go fishing off an FZR. All right. But what they do offer is a really beautiful, natural inside lean that lets the ski roll on its side and cut a corner. So that's why I'm using them as a round bottom. They're very tippy, all right, and that's fair. They're tippy, all right, but they use that rolling edge to execute cornering. So that's why I use them as the example for a round bottom. I'm pointing to the wrong thing. Here we go. Okay, so V-shaped hulls. The two examples I give are both modified V-shaped hulls. They're not true 100% V-shaped. In fact, there's no personal watercraft that looks like this all the way down. The only one that is the most of a V-shape from nose to stern is the Ultra. All right, the Kawasaki Ultra is the most aggressive V-shaped hull, okay? And that means that it also has the most wetted surface or the most drag. So it's important to note this, okay? It has a 22 and a half, I think it's a 22 and a half dead rise. And I'm going to talk about dead rise just in a minute, okay? Which means the angle of the V. And it has a very aggressive dead rise. And if you go and you crawl underneath an Ultra, you're going to see that hull shape, that V shape, carry the furthest down the ski. Now, interestingly enough, they all kind of mellow out. All right, they start like this and they go like that. All right, the further you go, midships is about the halfway point. The further back you go, the more they flatten out that V. Okay, the Cowie has the most aggressive bow dead rise and keel dead rise. I do not have the numbers off the keel dead rise off of the Ultra, but anyone who's looked at the back of an Ultra, you'll know for an absolute fact that the keel dead rise on an Ultra is the most aggressive of any personal watercraft out on the market today. Okay, so, and then the other example I give is the ST3. The ST3 is the platform for the current 2018 and up full-size three-seaters. And that is a terrible example. It's a terrible example, and I probably should get in trouble for using it. But here's the reason why I'm using it. A, Sea-Doo advertises as a deep V hull. It is not. They are capitalizing on a very catchy marketing term. All right. Cowie made its name. They cut their teeth in 2007 and up advertising the deep V hull. Okay. The ST3 is not a deep V hull by any means. What it has is an incredibly aggressive dead rise at the nose. All right. The bow dead rise is incredibly deep. All right. It's actually 23 degrees. It's more aggressive than the Ultra, believe it or not. But it's like, it's like this. But then it immediately flattens out. Why does it flatten out? Because they knew in designing that hull that they were going to build the Fish Pro off of it. So what they're doing is that they're grafting a very aggressive deep V nose onto a relatively flat-bottomed hull design. We're going to get into let me get into the nuts and bolts a little deeper. I want to talk about 4 more things that I've already touched on, and then we're going to give examples. All right. So let's talk about, I'm going to have to get on the other side just for this. Okay. So here are our hull characteristics. All right. Number 1, it's not really a characteristic, it's actually a design. So I'm wrong in labeling it like I did. Number 1 is dead rise. I just explained dead rise or dead rise angle. All right. And that is the pitch, all right, or the angle of the V. So, sorry, I'm not looking at the camera. I'm trying to look at the camera, but I'm also looking at myself, so I'm pointing at the right thing. So it's a little confusing. All right. Number 2. Again, for a lot of you guys who already know this stuff, it's old school. All right. Number 2 is keel. Keel is that center ridge, all right, I say pronounced, is that center line of the hull, all right, is that going to be that knife edge that you see on the ST3s? Like an RXTX has a knife edge that runs and then it mellows out real flat at the bottom. Okay, number 3 is chine. I've talked about chine or chines multiple times before, so I kind of want to do a Reader's Digest version here, and that is technically, by definition, a chine is the sharp change in angle on the cross section of a hull. Okay, so let's give examples of a chine. All right, so I say an FZR has a real, and this is an old ski. They've already replaced the FZR. Or the new RXTX for that matter. Let's say the new RXTX. The new RXTX, here, let's say this is, here we go. Here's the bond line, okay? And my chin is the keel. So the angle going from the edge of this line to my chin, that is our dead rise. I'm trying to do this with my hand. Okay, so here we go. Well, it's not a perfect V. It actually rolls in, okay? It makes a nice roll. This angle right here does not come down flat and then cut in. The ST3 does. The Fish Pro does. The GTX Limited. The RXTX. The GTX line. All right. They come flat and then come into almost 90 degree. It's like this. All right. It's like 118 degrees or 120 degrees. It's something like that. But it's almost completely dead flat, and then it goes into a shelf. A flat running shelf like a pontoon boat. The RXTX does not do that. The RXTX rolls, has a nice round rolled edge. And why do you want that? Because if you're going into a turn, you have a nice flat, or not flat, but a nice rounded contact surface that carries you all through a turn, okay? That is an outside chine. When I talk about outside chine, this is the angle I'm talking about. Whether it's round like a FZR or an RXTX or a GP 1800R or even the the FXs. The FXs have a rounded outside chine, okay? That's what's important. Now, if you were to look at a ski like it's hanging, sometimes in studio shots, they'll give you a nice studio shot of like what the hull looks like from the front. And you'll see shit almost look like steps. All right. They're almost stepped. Okay. Those angles, those outside angles, those are your chines. It's important to pay attention to that because let's say you got a ski with 3 of those. All right. Center one, middle one, outside one, and they're all sharp like this. Let's just pretend we have this one, okay? As it accelerates, all right, it's riding on the outsides, but it accelerates, it's going to step up one. The ski's going to pop out of the water a little bit higher. It's going to pop up on this one. Then you go full speed. You're going 70 miles an hour. It goes, whoop, we only need this much surface. So it goes down to that one, okay? So you'll literally feel the ski as it rises to its planing surface. It's going to go pop. It's going to pop up. All right, boop, boop, boop. All right, that's what they do. Now, we have the last one we're going to talk about is strakes. All right, let me get back into this thing. All right, so here we go. We're talking about strakes. What is a strake? A strake is a continuous line or ridge in a hull or wing. Believe it or not, fighter planes have strakes. 747 passenger planes have strakes. All right. Yamaha wave runners have strakes. And what these strakes do, all right, they're pointed down. Typically, they're pointed down or maybe a little bit out, but they're this little an ear-like ridge, okay, that typically point down, okay? Or I shouldn't say down like 90 degrees perpendicular, but they do cock out a little bit. But what those do, all right, in an airplane, what they do is that they actually help stabilize air turbulence. All right, they stabilize the wing, they stabilize the watercraft. All right. Oh, great example. You guys have you seen the air diffusers on like the back of like a Corvette or a Ferrari or a Porsche? And they're like the little vertical knife blades that you see on the back. Typically the exhaust is right here. Then you'll see those vertical diffusers. Those are technically a strake, all right? What they're doing is they're helping direct and stabilize under air, low pressure air underneath the car, out underneath the car, okay? That's the purpose of those. They're to stabilize and accelerate low pressure air. So why would a watercraft have this? Well, water acts just like a thicker version of air. So you see a watercraft and it has those strakes. Those strakes help stabilize the craft as it goes through a variation of water conditions. And as the ski accelerates, what it does is that, how I talked about this? Well, imagine two little blades poking out, running out through here on either side. Suddenly it's riding on that center section, but it's got two little blades poking out like this that run the length of the watercraft. Suddenly it's acting like a hydrofoil. Not technically out of the water like a hydrofoil, but it's a stabilizer and it's an accelerator, okay? Why does Yamaha depend so heavily on strakes, on what they call a lifting strake? Why do they look at the GPs, guys? Roll a GP over, or just go look at a picture. You can go Google GP 1800R hull, and they'll roll over, and you're going to see a sequence of strakes. They're relying on those strakes because that is its tracking surface. All right. When it's going fast, it's using those strakes to keep it straight. So let's talk about hull designs and what skis do best in what conditions. Everyone does fine on glass. Everyone does great on glass. Okay. Now, interestingly enough, which I think is great, is that the ST3, all right, the RXTX does great on glass. And it's fast on glass. And guys are going fast on RXTXs. They're getting speed out of them. All right. Here's the problem, though. It's doing that because the keel's not doing much. The nose isn't doing much because it doesn't need it. All right. I said keel and I meant the bow. All right. That very vertical dead rise in the front. It's not doing a lot of work because that ski's out of the water. And it's running on a very smooth, round keel. You guys crawl underneath your RXTX or your GTX. You're going to see it's round. I mean, it's round like this. I mean, it's super round, okay? And that means that, let's say you're going full speed. Let's say you're going 70 miles an hour on your RXTX and it's glass. Do me a favor. Shift your weight from back and forth. And that ski will just go, all right? Because it's tracking so smooth on a tiny running surface. All right. But what happens, you start getting into 2 foot, 3 foot chop with an RXTX. Okay. That really pronounced bow starts to catch. It'll actually catch the really rough the water, the cross tracking, the current. It'll catch and it'll require the rider to put in a lot more input to keep that bow straight, okay? Erminio Tosca and a lot of other guys who race the Sea-Doos or are really aggressive on the new ST3 hull, they said the same thing about the ST3 hull as they did about the previous RXPX, in that it would dart. That keel's going like this, and let's say a weird angled swell comes in, it'll catch, and it'll go, whoa, and it'll pull. And if you're not paying attention, it'll whip right out of your hands, okay? We've commented this in a lot of our reviews. We've commented on this in a lot of aftermarket installment stuff. And why is that? Because the way to offset that, believe it or not, is with a really good set of sponsons. It's not the silver bullet. It's not 100% fix. But when you put on the Riva Pro Series sponsons on an RXPX or a GTX Limited, especially like the 300s, when you're really going fast, what those sponsons do and why they're so important is because those sponsons get installed and they're deep. They're a very deep blade, a lot deeper than the factory sponsons. The factory X-series sponsons leave a lot to be desired. Let's put it that way. The Riva Pro Series sponsons not only provide a strake, yeah, makes sense, right? All right, provides a strake, but I want you to pay attention to the inside. And we did stories on these, and you guys can search on the Watercraft Journal. Go to the search bar, type in Riva Pro Series. You can even just put in Pro Series sponsons, and it'll come up. We did a very, very laborious deep dive on sponson design, and we did a comparison between the factory sponsons, the Works sponsons, and the Pro Series sponsons. And I'm sorry, the Pro Series Riva sponsons murder the other two guys. I'm going to be real legit. All right, they curb stomp the other two, and the reason being is because, most importantly, besides creating a new strake, is you look at the actual backing plate, the plate that mounts to the hull, and then the blade mounts to that backing plate. The backing plate is open like this on the back. What does that concave surface do? Provides suction, provides traction. It's suddenly pulling the tail down. And you've got yourself these directional strakes. So these sponsons actually completely reverse a lot of the mistakes in the ST3 hull. It's not a mistake. Oh, I shouldn't say mistake. Because they're intentional. The reason they did these certain things in the ST3 hull is to primarily service a lot of different watercraft. It's to service the Fish Pro. It's to service the Wake Pro. It's to service the RXTX. So they tried to create a hull to do everything. And that's kind of an impossible miracle. The Pro Series sponsons do that and do it better than anyone else. Next, the other thing that's great is that they changed the pivot point, and that's something else that we could talk about. The pivot point of the hull. It actually advances where in the ski it wants to turn. So let me just use a visual. Here's a visual aid. Okay, so here's the hull. Here's the bow. Here's the stern. Where does it want to turn? When you turn the bars, is it turning from the rear? Is it turning on the nose? Is it turning in the middle? Where does it want to turn? Changing the pivot point is ideal. Finding the pivot point and then trying to focus all the effort there is ideal or is optimal for every watercraft's ideal cornering. So it's really important to talk about that. And it's really important to focus on that. And I think we're going to end up doing something on what a top loader intake grate does and why an intake grate is so important, because of its interaction with the pivot point of a watercraft. But that's another subject for another day. So rough water, in a rough water scenario, any sponsons for a Fish Pro. I mean, you can put the Pro Series on there, but dude, it's a Fish Pro. You're not racing it. So, yeah. I mean, you can. If you want, you can put an air intake and a through hull exhaust. If you want, on a Fish Pro, be the loudest Fish Pro on the planet, but still a Fish Pro. All right. So let's talk about rough water applications. Kawasaki. Let's start at the top. Let's start with the Ultra. All right. When I was racing offshore, I raced Ultras because at the time they were the best hull. I mean, everyone just was like, "That's the best hull. That's the best." It's to the point that everyone's like, "Oh, it's Cowie water out there. Ooh, it's so rough. It's Cowie water." Okay, so I built a couple Ultras and raced Ultras and jacked my wrist up on an Ultra and blew the coolant hoses off halfway to Catalina Island and all that kind of fun stuff. Racing. And what was interesting about an Ultra was at the time, unless you completely threw away the supercharger, the pistons, you had, and the ECU, you weren't going over 72, 73 on an Ultra. It just was impossible at the time. And the reason being for that is, again, as I mentioned, a deep V hull has a lot of wetted surface. It means it has a lot of drag. Okay. And like we talked about last week, Ultras, curb weight to curb weight, are still the heaviest watercraft on the market, only by 51 pounds. All right. An RXTX fully loaded with all of its fluids is just 51 pounds lighter than an Ultra 310R. So not the biggest thing, but anyhow, why are you sweating so bad? I don't think I'm sweating. Am I sweating? No, not sweating. It's air conditioned. We're good. All right. So anyhow, not for racing the Fish Pro, just for a smoother ride. That's the hull. That's the hull. Sorry. You can't fix the hull when it comes to just because, I mean, a Fish Pro, you're going to be if you're trolling at 8 miles an hour or trolling at 2 miles an hour, or if you're just going out to your destination out in the ocean, you're going to have the teeth knocked out of you if it's a really rough day. All right? Because it's a flat bottom hull. The ST3 hull is a flat bottomed hull. Go down and look at it. All right? The midship and the transom dead rise are almost flat like a barge. All right? They're flat. They're super duper flat. And flat is great for stability, which is great for a Fish Pro. Because if you're standing on the transom of a Fish Pro, you could be 235 pounds, just zzz, with the music going. You're like, oh, this is a great day. I'm having a great day. And you can walk all around that ski, not have a problem. You can stand on those footwell wedges or the foot wedges that they got and not roll the ski over because there's so much. It's a super sharp outside chine, and it's a super flat surface. It's just that they just slapped a very aggressive nose, a very aggressive dead rise on the bow. So I'm 266. I have no problem walking around that ski. It's super stable. Dude, the Fish Pro is super stable. I actually just rewatched my Fish Pro video yesterday. I don't know why, but I did. And I just was laughing at absolutely how stable it is. So, I mean, that's ultimately, that's again, it's a thankless job is to try to make a hull that does everything for everyone. So anyhow, that is something rather interesting about that hull design. So the Cowie and why the Cowie does so well in rough water is A, because it has a very aggressive dead rise that cuts through chop. And so much of the watercraft is down in the water. So it's not skimming across the water. It's blasting, just bang, 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 cutting its way like a World War II battleship through that rough water. Okay. Now, when it comes to less aggressive deep V hulls, all right, Yamaha really at no time talks about the deep V hull because their dead rise is actually a very mild dead rise. It's something like 17%. Okay, it's a or 17 degrees. I shouldn't say percent. 17-degree dead rise. It's a very mild round hull. All right. But what's interesting is that they're using the strakes to compensate for that. And that is why you're seeing FXs and you're seeing GPs that scream across the water because there's so little wetted surface. It's not dragging through the water. And those strakes are helping it track through any situation in chop or rough water. Okay. The other half of it is the fact that the watercraft is really surprisingly balanced from bow to keel, bow to transom, and side to side. It doesn't wander. It doesn't walk. But here's the problem with those that a lot of people have encountered. And in my example, I said before that it tracks true and it handles true, but the comfort level is low. And why is the comfort level low? The comfort level in this scenario, and not in using the word comfort in the definitions that I established at the beginning of this video, is that Nano Excel 2 is very thin. It's strong, but it's thin. And when it's thin, it flexes. The other half of it is that they do not pack that watercraft with the same amount of insulation that you would say an Ultra Cowie, all right, or even an ST3 hull seated. So you're feeling, especially on an SVHO GP 1800R, you're going to feel everything. You're just going to rattle across the water, but you're going to do it straight, and you're going to be able to execute any turn you want in almost any conditions. All right. It's the reason they're winning a lot of races. It's a reason why they even win offshore stuff. Like they're out of Daytona Beach winning, and it's monster water out there, and they're jumping in the surf, but they're still keeping straight, and they're predictable. Here's kind of a little food for thought, and I'm already at 55 minutes. I want you guys to watch a little bit of videos. All right. You can watch my videos. You can watch some race footage. Race footage is interesting because you can kind of see the extremes of what these watercraft are being put through. And I want you to pay attention to rider input. When I say rider input, I want you to look at what they're doing with the handlebars. Are they doing this the whole time? Are they keeping it straight? Do they have to jostle it? Do they just roundly go into turns? And body English. Are they sitting down? Are they standing up? Where are they standing on the watercraft? Pay attention to that kind of stuff, because it's very, very interesting. When you do pay attention to those things, you're seeing the racer trying to make the ski as happy as possible. All right. They're trying to make sure that it's, doing what the hull wants to do. They want to make sure that ski is happy being put through the, torture like it is. So again, it's difficult to translate to you guys, the regular Joes who are out there riding. They're not racers. Okay, well, what do we do? What am I looking for? All right. The question is what kind of ride are you looking for? And how often do you ride in really rough water? Okay. For example, like I tell a lot of people, I'm like, go get a GTX 230. It's great. The seat's super comfortable. I'm like, are you riding offshore? I'm like, no, man, I ride rivers. I ride intercoastal waterway. I ride smooth water the whole time. I go get something that's the most comfortable seat you can get, that the ergonomics are great. And nothing can beat any of the ergolocks. Ergolocks are super comfortable. I put my 78-year-old father with a bad hip and bad leg on an ergolock seat, and he's like, this thing's like a motorcycle. It's great. I put him on like a Ultra. He's like, dude, I feel like I'm riding bareback on a Clydesdale. This is seats this wide. So again, depending on what kind of riding you plan on doing, or your health or your riding ability, it really depends on, don't let the colors affect you. Look at what kind of riding you're planning on doing. Now, for example, all right, I give a lot of examples, but I'm trying to hammer down some stuff here. So let's say you're riding glass the whole time. All right. I say find the one with the most comfortable seat you can get. The one that fits you the best. Great. Do that. Now, if you're like, hey, I want to be a hot rodder, I want something lightweight, I want something that is, super quick, and I want to get into it with my buddies. Okay, fine. You're going to have to sacrifice a few things. All right. Now, I had people legitimately ask me, what's the difference between an FX HO and an FX SVHO besides the engine? And I go, well, weight. And they go, well, okay, weighs more. What's the big deal? I go, no. The hull and deck are made out of Nano XL versus Nano XL 2. Nano XL 2 is very lightweight. I jokingly say it oil cans. It's just that it naturally flexes. All right. Nano XL 1, or just regular Nano XL. Nano XL is thicker, weighs more, and it absorbs more. So everyone, I got a local club here in Tennessee. They almost all unanimously ride FX Cruiser HOs. They love the fuel mileage, 8.5 gallon tank, tons of storage, comfortable, big glove box, tilt steering. It's Cadillac. They love it. They love it. All right. And every time I show up on a Sea-Doo or a Cowie, they all make fun of me and thumb their nose and, oh, you should get an FX. Okay, great. Anyhow, but you talk to those guys and you're like, oh, it's a smooth ride. Oh, it's a smooth ride through the chop. Well, yeah, through the chop, through rough water, it's one of the best tracking three-seaters. It tracks the best. All right. The hull design. The hull design also is one of the best handling rough water 3-seaters. But again, it's naturally aspirated, weighs a little bit more. All right. You bump up to an SVHO, tracking and handling, still the same, not so heavy, comfort level drops. You understand what I'm saying? So there's a give and take. You can't have them all you can't have all the bars maxed out. You gotta give and take a little bit. So we covered ultras, we covered ST3s, we covered FXs, we covered GPs. So RXTX. Interesting thing about RXTX, the new RXTX. What I found with the new RXTX is on glass, the thing's a monster. I mean, it's a monster. It's a Gixxer. It's a sport bike that, you know, is way more machine than a lot of people can handle. All right. Its ergonomics are great. Storage is crazy, especially for for a hot rod. It's expensive. You're going to pay for it. You're going to pay a premium. All right. You're going to pay a premium just for some basic stuff like a back seat. You're going to pay a premium for the adjustable steering and pay a premium for a color and all those sorts of things. All right. But if you want like the rowdiest, one of the meanest machines out there, especially on glass, it's Trick. It's Trick. All right. Interestingly, when I was in about 1.5 to 2 foot chop out on Lake Martin, tail would unhook. And what I meant by unhook was that I mean completely viced, white knuckled pinned, and standing up, and I had my feet back. I was trying to get my weight a little further back, actually probably further. I mean, I was directly over the engine, and I had it at neutral trim, and just screaming along, just boom, boom, boom. I mean, I was never under 67 miles an hour, just and it was just kind of skipping and skimming along. But because it was skipping across the water so fast, it would actually unhook the pump. And that happens. That happens with a lot of new watercraft. Or performance. I shouldn't say what new, but a lot of performance watercraft. They're going to unhook. Cowies, when they unhook, they almost throw you forward over the bars. But it's because there's so much thrust coming out of that pump. And because the ski is so deep in the water, when it does unhook, that means you're in 4 foot, 5 foot rough ocean. So it goes ding, and anyone who's raced a Cowie or really gone rough on a Cowie out in the open ocean, you know that sound of supercharger boost scrubbing off on an Ultra. So that'll never leave you. That'll haunt you in your sleep. But what was funny was that when the new RXTX would unhook, it would jolt, and you would feel it a little bit. You're like, whoa, okay. And it was just ring, ring, ring. And I was curious, and I was like, okay, well, I want to know what's going on here. And it was funny because, again, I was on an international tune. All right. I was on an RS tune. That's the tune that you would buy in Australia. It's the tune you buy in Europe. All right. So that's why I was doing 73 and change on a GPS. So I'm like, oh, okay. Are we offloading? What's going on here? I want to know. So I started talking to some of the smartest people in the industry who are not going to share their names right now, primarily because they don't want to get fired. But they said, well, that prop is ideal for the US tune, and it's not going to unhook as much that you're feeling. He says, but ideally you're going to want an intake grate that really hooks, and that unfortunately scrubs about 1 mile an hour off. And so if you put a SCOM unit on with this intake grate, you're never going to unhook, and you're going to be doing 75 all day long until the cows come home. So that was really interesting. And it's just, again, it goes back to the balance of what the hull wants to do, keeping the pump hooked up, and keeping your traction. The nice thing is that the new RXTX, which there's about 28 or 29 changes that they made from the old hull to the new hull. So the old hull was called T3. The new one's T3R. So one with the shark gills on the side. Anyway, that hull didn't feel as darty, erratic or unpredictable as the old one did. All right. One of the biggest marketing terms and one of the biggest things that Yamaha pushes is predictability. Is that it doesn't do anything you're not expecting. And I hate to say it, but especially the FX SVHO and the GP SVHO. I mean, I've been in the weeds. I mean, I've been really pushing those units before, and it's never surprised me. It's never pushed out of a turn too wide. It's never cut in weird. At no point have those two machines done anything that surprised me. And I was like, oh, wait a minute. What's going on here? At no point did either of those two machines do anything that was unpredictable. The ST3 has been unpredictable. And the only way that I really, really like about the ST3 is the minute you put a set of Pro Series sponsons on and drop those blades down to number 4 or number 5. Number 5 is a little too aggressive. Number 4 I found was the sweet spot. Drop the trend down 1 notch down below neutral, and it will pretty much do everything you'll ask it to do. I have unhooked the tail with the Pro Series sponsons on and a scom with the bow dropped. I never go almost all the way down. The only time I ever go all the way down is with an RXTX and with a GP. But on the RXTX that I had, the 300, I was always 1 notch above bottom or 1 higher. But the sponsons with the scom, I fell in love with the ski all over again. I really did. And the Riva Pro Series intake grate totally solves any unhooking issue that I found in cornering on the ST3. I haven't done offshore, but I have done some rough lake with that setup. And that is what I really like on an ST3 hull, is the intake grate, a scom, and those Pro Series sponsons. It'll handle, it'll corner, it won't do anything weird. I'm actually really, really happy with that setup on any ST3. So to answer your question, would it work on a 230? I presume you're talking about a GTX 230? Yes. The hull is the hull. The hull hasn't changed. Whether it's a 230 Wake Pro or a 230 GTX, the hull is the hull. Okay, so we're an hour 10 into this. Guys, I think that is pretty much what I'm going to talk about when it comes to rough water and rough water hulls. A lot of people want me to declaratively say that this one's the best and that one's the worst and this one's better and this is the in-between. I've kind of gone over every hull design. But I mean, yeah, I kind of have. Besides like the VXs. Well, the VX hull is the same as the GP hull. It's just heavier because it's, again, Nano 1. All right. So just like I talked about the FXs, same story. And then, of course, the STX hull is also made out of FMC fiberglass, just like the Ultra. And the ST3, or the STX hull is one of the winningest hulls of all time. So we'll leave it at that. By the way, I have a great video of me going like 7 minutes straight at wide open throttle in the Pacific Ocean in Coronado Bay on a brand new 160 LX. It got downvoted because it had no voiceover. I was just pinning it. And I went from the back of the pack all the way to the head of the pack, all the way underneath the Coronado Bridge. Pay attention to that video. If you guys want to see what that Cowie does in rough water, watch that video, watch the handlebars, and watch what the bow does. And you're going to see that guy's a winner. All right? That ski's a winner. All right, let's go over the questions. We got a lot of questions. And let me get my Bluetooth stupid mouse to wake up. All right, here we go. We got some hellos. We're going all the way back all the way to the beginning. We're going to come down. We're going to spend about 10 minutes on these, and then I'm going to check out. All right. All right. How did you like the Fish Pro? I didn't get a chance to ride the Fish Pro. I was supposed to, but it just wasn't. I just didn't have the time, and I needed to get more stuff on the. I needed more time on the RXTX, and so I made a executive decision, and I spent the time on the RXTX over the Fish Pro. I can always go back down to Florida and ride the Fish Pro, but I wanted another day on the RXTX. Okay, speaking of hull tracking, Polytech 2.0, how good is it? The hull design for the new 2.0 Polytech, which is on all the GTIs and on the GTR 230, is outstanding. It is probably one of the best hull designs, especially intermediate or recreation segment hull designs that Sea-Doo has given. You do not feel flexing. You do not feel oil canning. It doesn't rattle you. I've racked up a whole bunch of hours on my GTI. I really, really do like it. In fact, I'm going to tell you right now, Mark, that ski is in the running for Watercraft of the Year. There's always a top 3. It's in the top 3. All right. When will you get your hands on a 2021 GTX Limited? Probably not. I just probably won't. A 300, I presume, with the screen. I know everyone wants to see the screen. Unless I can pull a miracle out of my hat and get down to Melbourne, Florida, probably in January, I might be able to do a walk around on the screen. Whether I'm able to ride it, I don't know. I mean, the ski hasn't changed mechanically. It's just the hull design. So if I can get the hull design. Oh my gosh, it's only the dash that's changed. If I can do a video just on the dashboard, I will. All right. I don't know if you can say much about the 2021 Limited HO. Could you tell me if you enjoy the craft? I presume you mean the FX Limited or the VX. The VX Limited HO is great. I mean, it's the same thing as the Cruiser, the VX Cruiser HO. It just comes with all the accessories in the catalog. In fact, that's been in our top Watercraft of the Year running almost every year for like the last 3 years. It's a fantastic ski, all-around ski. By the way, there is a very good reason why the Yamaha VX Cruiser HO has been the #1 selling watercraft for 3 years running. 3 years in a row. It's the #1 selling personal watercraft. Not a Spark, not an EX, not an RXT. It's this thing. The Yamaha VX Cruiser HO is the #1 selling personal watercraft in the world. Okay. Hello from France, Gulf of Mexico. It gets old. Okay, that's really, John's got a good question. Gulf of Mexico from I presume you mean Port of Arkansas, is that right? On my 2009 Fish Pro, I'm on gas, off gas, over and over, rolling through highways. Yeah, dude. It's the hull. And I don't have an answer for you when it gets into the conditions like that. Trim up, get your butt back, nose up through it, and just keep your mouth open so you don't crush your fillings. All right. This is why I picked up the Ultra 310 since I live in Miami and always ride in the ocean. Great. I mean, again, there's a reason why so many championships have been won by Ultras. All right. I mean, especially offshore and the Mark Hahn. I mean, Pastorello's got his Mark Hahn team just dialed in. They're like a NASCAR team. They're so dialed. All right. Cowie is probably the best rough water unit. FX Cruiser is next, but still not as good. Yeah, Cowie is a really good rough water unit, especially because of the wear and tear on the rider itself. You don't feel the fatigue that you might feel on another ski because it's soaking up so much. It just it kind of insulates the rider from a lot of the banging and a lot of the vibrations. It really does. This is a serious question. Do you prefer Yamaha or Sea-Doo? It depends on what I'm doing. Depends on what kind of riding I'm doing. Depends on my location. Depends on. It really does depend because they're different. So I'm not gonna. That's my honest answer. Is it depends on what I'm doing. All right. Because of reliability, Sea-Doo is nice, but Yamaha is better built, in my opinion. Okay. Well, I mean, they all have. Everyone's got their warts and everyone's got their their shining attributes. I mean, they all do. Everyone's got problems. All right. Deep V on the FX, I think it's a count. Yeah, there's really no deep V on an FX. The dead rise angle on an FX is something like 18%. It's not an aggressive dead rise. They are a predominantly round bottomed hull. Okay. Fish Pro is great, 5 miles off Galveston, but shipping channel a little rough. Oh, I can imagine. Is Polytech is it better on the GTI 170 or GTR 230? Well, it's the same. It's just you're putting more power to it. For the 170, it's unnoticeable. For the 170, you don't even know it's a plastic hull. I shouldn't say plastic. That's not fair. Polypropylene. But you just don't know. You can't tell. On the GTR 230, you still don't get the flexing that you might expect, like from a Trix or regular Spark or a Spark Trix. There's just no flexing. I was very happy with it. We did a review of it, and I was really happy with it. All right. We pay you good money on your website to promote Sea-Doo marketing. You got another troll. Hallelujah. By the way, Yamaha pays me nice too. So does Cowie. Riva pays me good too. We like all of those guys. Hey, you know what? Slippery. I almost wear nothing but slippery. So I'm just a shill for everybody. Trolls. All right. Big 3 sponsons are just about the same as the factory RXP sponson without the wing. Incorrect. Wholly incorrect. And you can look at the article. Like, I break it down. Like, there's no question. So, unfortunately, yeah, you're incorrect. Gen 1 works are also deeper if you can catch your hands on this. The work sponson is deep. Yes, it's comparatively deep. Here's the difference, though. All right. The blade on the work sponson is unbroken. It is a complete and total piece of material. There's no shape to it. All right. Besides, obviously, the leading edge and a trailing edge. But why does Riva put all this effort into doing these weird serrated saw blades and all these different, all these different shapes? The shapes are absolutely and totally imperative to the shape of the blade. All right. It's not just being cool. It's not because, this will look neat. No, it actually has hydrodynamic reasoning. And I have all the CAD designs. And you see what the hydrodynamics do. All right. In the blade being deeper in the front on the ST3, it changes the pivot point of the ST3 forward on that watercraft. It makes the watercraft turn its pivot point further forward. Interestingly enough, that same blade does not work on the FX, on the Yamaha FX. Why? Because that hull wants to turn on its tail. So they literally recut it so that it favors the tail. The pivot point is almost exactly at the tail end of the pump, all right? Because it's turning back here instead of up here. Big difference. Sponson design is incredibly important. And it's not just this one's cool and these guys are cheaper, so I don't want to spend the money on Riva. You're cutting off your nose to spite your face. All right. At least compared to the new ones, Riva on the GP VXR. No. Guaranteed. All right, let's see here. I skipped ahead. Sorry, guys. Fish Pro, 5 miles. Yada, yada, yada. Great show. I learned something new each time. Well, Bobby, you're welcome. Thank you for showing up. All right, let's see. Would those sponsons work on 230? Yes. Every ST3, you can get those sponsons on any Sea-Doo ST3. GTR, GTI hull. Similar feeling to my old 08 RXTX. Playful, track straight, and handled chop well, but still requires good amount of rider input. Correct. Rider input. The old RXP and RXPXs, the 255s, I loved them. They were fun. And what's really interesting about the old RXPX prior to the redesign in 2012 was that hull design fared rather well offshore. I mean, I knew guys who raced that hull offshore, and it did really well. Now, it beat the crap out of them, but it tracked like a razor blade. So don't count it out. It's a little tiny little guy, but man, it cut really straight. I knew a lot of racers who swore by it. Okay. I've ridden 07 FX Cruiser. 07? Okay. And a 2011 VX Cruiser, and I noticed that when going gets even slightly rough, the ride becomes rough and is very bad. Wonder what they changed. Well, dude, you're talking 13, 14 years in design software. You're talking a lot of experience. You learn from your mistakes. Yeah, there's a big difference. I mean, they just learn. You just learn. I mean, GP hull. Well, interesting story about the GP hull. VX GP hull. Believe it or not, this is actually really interesting. Was when the economy took a dump in 2008, 2009, all right, the Obama economy crashed. All right, when that happened, Yamaha kind of went, oh, corporate did. This is Japan. Japan freaked out. And Japan basically called Kennesaw and was like, all right, if we're gonna stay alive, we need to kill all other models and just have one wave runner. And the guys at Yamaha were like, what? And they're like, design one hull. So they said, all right, well, we need something that we can race. We need something that is comfortable to cruise. We need something that does everything for everyone. So that's when they started messing with the Nano and Nano XL and Nano XL2 and all the lightweight stuff. But in 2015, well, it was 14 that they introduced it, but it came out as a 15 model. They introduced the redesigned VX line and had the VXR. The VXR was made out of Nano XL, and everyone, ooh, cool. It's lightweight. That same press intro, I'm sitting down with Scott Watkins, and he goes, dude, we got an SVH, or he says, we got one of these with an SVHO engine in it. And I was like, yeah, but you got the FZs. He goes, nah, this with an SVHO engine is stupid. And I was like, okay, interesting. 2 years later was when the first GP 1800 came out. And it was exactly what he said, a VX or a VXR in Nano XL2 with the new engine. And here we are today. So they were planning, and it was a Hail Mary. They were like, oh my gosh, if the economy doesn't pull out of this nosedive, in order for us to stay relevant, we have to have something that does everything. And that was the impetus of the VX hull design. So the VX hull design, it has a lot, there's a lot in there. They poured a lot of thought into that ski. It's very, very interesting. Okay. Port Aransas. Oh, okay. Aransas? Port Aransas? Is that how you pronounce it? By Corpus Christi? I've never been, so I don't know. I apologize. Port Aransas. Okay. 2021 GP 1800R or 2021 FX SVHO. I can't decide. Mark, how fat are you? And what kind of riding do you do? Because if you need something that's a little bit more cushy and you need something that's just a little bit more forgiving, go FX. To be honest, I'd go FX. I'm a big guy. Plus, I got kids and I want to take the wife out and I can cruise it. So I like the FX. I push more people on FXs than I do GPs. In fact, I try to talk people out of GPs. All right. Which sponsons would you run on a 2018 RXT 300? Exactly what I said. The Riva Pro Series. All right. I've got 5 more minutes. I'm going to go to a minute or an hour and a half because this is terrible. All right. Would you be able to give us the inside scoop on the new Kawasaki upgrades? None. There are none. None. 2022 will be BNG. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But I'm like 98.9%. You have a greater chance of getting COVID than you do seeing breaks on an Ultra for 2022. I'll say it that way. Sorry. All right, let's see here. Will you be able to give us... Okay. Also, 2022 FX SVHO upgrades. Yeah. If you like the integrated sound system that's on the new VX series and GPs, it'll be on that one. Because they spent the money. All you have to do is follow the money. Guys, pay attention to the money. Where does money go? This is a prediction. I don't really know, but I'm pretty sure they're going to get rid of the touchscreen and they're going to go to the little toggle pad, just like on the GPs and the VXs. The touchscreen is kind of problematic, and not that it breaks down or it's bad or it doesn't work. It's problematic because people are monkeying with touching the screen while they're writing, and it's just. They think it's like, oh, this is really cool, but at the same thread, they're kind of like, this is really gimmicky, and we could do the same thing with the software through a touchpad, and that's why they did that on the GPs and the VX series. So it might go the way of the Dodo. I don't know. They haven't said anything. That's me thinking. All right. Any idea how badly the 2021 GP beats you up in rough water? I would actually say it will be more forgiving in rough water than the previous GP. And that is because of the redesigned hull liner and the better balancing of the Watercraft, how they moved the fuel tank back and down. I tried to find some rough water on the lake I was in. It didn't do anything squirrely. It's still lightweight. You're still gonna feel things through your feet and through your hands. So because it's a lightweight racecraft, it's not, that Leopard is not going to change its spots, but it can be more balanced and a little bit more refined. But it's not. They're not going to pump a bunch of weight into it to absorb vibrations and chatter. They're just not gonna. All right, because they want to keep the weight down. They want to win. All right. Let's see here. I think we're done, guys. What's your opinion on Sea-Doo 2-strokes, especially the XPL? Obviously, the 4-strokes are better for offshore. Just curious how far the industry has come in that area. You know what's interesting? I'm personally really bummed that the E-Tech Evinrude is gone. That Evinrude's gone. Because the E-Tech was one of the most impressive engines that I'd seen at any boat show, in 15 years. It was one of the most, and it's a 2-stroke, and you can put your hand up to the exhaust and it would burn your hand. It was incredible. That engine was incredible. So I honestly, when they were saying they were going to have a spark, my prediction was they were going to put the E-Tech motor in there. I didn't even look at the snowmobile motors. I was looking at Evinrude, and I was like, that E-Tech belongs in that ski. But yeah, I was really impressed by it. I don't see 2-strokes coming back. I see it. I mean, obviously the technology has improved, but with the political nature of boating and so many people being, at least on paper or at least on a ballot saying that they're an environmentalist, you're not going to see Can-Am or Yamaha go back to 2-strokes just because 2-stroke has a dirty name. Sorry. All right. Any recommendations for a cheap starter stand-up? Ooh. I'd tell you tomorrow to go get a Cowie SXR 800 because I love them. But chances you finding one cheap, tough. Thankfully, well, pre-2009 701 stand-up, cut your teeth on that ski. Great ski, very nimble, a little more challenging than an 800. But if you get really good at a 701 round nose, you can ride anything. So, and they're pretty plentiful. So I would kind of look at a pre-2009 Superjet. Okay. How does the new GTI hull and chop better than ST3? Okay, I've already, yeah. And yes, it's better than ST3. We've already answered that one. Guys, we're at an hour and a half. I'm done. So I'm going to check out. Thanks again for tuning in. This has been a fun one. Hopefully you guys got something out of this. You learned a little bit. Please go check out the article. It's a better version of this conversation topic. But I did want to reiterate that article again, and it is at the top of this. So you can go check it out. Other than that, we're done. Thanks again for everything. And keep your eyes peeled for the K-Speed Stage 1 Ultra Test video. Hopefully this Wednesday. Should be this Wednesday. Yeah, better be this Wednesday. Okay, guys, have a good night. We'll see you soon. And buy a t-shirt. All right, that's my pitch. We'll see you soon. And buy a t-shirt. All right, that's my pitch.